The Cincinnati Bengals have spent this entire offseason loading up on superstars, making splashy trades, and signing big-name free agents to transform their defense from a liability into a potential strength. But while everyone has been focused on Dexter Lawrence, Jonathan Allen, and the other household names, the front office might have quietly found something special in the 7th round of the draft. I'm Dre, and welcome back to Street Hoops. We need to talk about Landon Robinson, because the Bengals may have just found their secret weapon, and he's been hiding in plain sight this entire time. The 226th overall pick out of Navy has the kind of story that makes you believe in the draft process all over again, and I'm here to tell you exactly why this undersized defensive tackle is going to shock everyone when training camp kicks off. This isn't just another late-round flyer. This isn't just a guy who will be forgotten by the time the regular season starts. This is a player who has the potential to carve out a real role on one of the most talented defensive lines in the NFL, and if you're not paying attention to him right now, you're going to be scrambling to learn his name when he starts making plays in the preseason. Now, before we dive into the film and the stats and the Aaron Donald comparisons, I need you to understand the context of what the Bengals are working with on the defensive line. This room is absolutely loaded. According to the depth chart, they have Dexter Lawrence, who is arguably the best defensive tackle in the league. They have Jonathan Allen, a proven veteran who has been a consistent producer for years. They have B.J. Hill, who has been a steady presence for this team. They have T.J. Slayton, McKinley Jackson, Chris Jenkins Jr., and the list goes on. It is one of the deepest, most talented defensive tackle rooms in the entire NFL. And into that room walks Landon Robinson, a 7th-round pick who is listed at just 6 feet and 295 pounds. On paper, he looks like a long shot. On paper, he looks like a guy who's going to be fighting for a practice squad spot. But here's the thing about paper, it doesn't account for heart, and it doesn't account for the kind of work ethic that makes a player special. It doesn't account for the kind of determination that drives a player to seek out the best in the world and learn from them directly. And it certainly doesn't account for the chip on the shoulder that comes from being overlooked by every single team in the league. But what happened next shocked everyone, because when you look at the numbers, when you look at what Robinson actually did on the field at Navy, the picture starts to look very different. Over 3 seasons with the midshipmen, Robinson finished with 153 tackles, 18.5 tackles for loss, and 14.5 sacks in 38 games, and he saved his best season for last. In 2025, he recorded 64 tackles, 8.5 tackles for loss, and 6.5 sacks, earning the American Athletic Conference Defensive Player of the Year and a first-team Associated Press All-American nod. Those aren't 7th-round numbers. Those aren't numbers you expect from a guy who fell all the way to pick 226. Those are the numbers of a player who should have been drafted much, much higher. So why did he fall? The answer is simple and frustrating. Size. NFL teams are obsessed with size. They always have been. They look at a guy who is 6 feet tall and 295 pounds, and they see a tweener, a guy who doesn't fit the prototype, a guy who might not hold up against the monsters they face on the offensive line every week. But what they consistently miss with players like Robinson is that size isn't everything. Technique matters, leverage matters, quickness matters, and Robinson has all of those things in abundance. Here's where things become even more interesting. Robinson fell in the draft primarily because he lacks the traditional NFL size for a defensive tackle. At 6 feet and 295 pounds, he's considered undersized. He's a tweener. He doesn't fit the mold of what teams typically look for in an interior defensive lineman. But here's the twist. His compact frame also gives him a natural advantage over taller interior offensive linemen. He has natural leverage that taller players simply can't replicate. And that's where the Aaron Donald comparisons start to make a lot of sense. Donald, who spent his entire career dominating much larger blockers, despite being listed at 6'1" and 280 pounds, proved that size isn't everything. Robinson has embraced that comparison, and he's studied how Donald turned his lack of traditional size into an advantage. He's watched the film, he's studied the technique, and he's worked to incorporate those lessons into his own game. And the biggest twist came later, because Robinson didn't just watch Aaron Donald film from afar. During spring break, ahead of the draft, Robinson traveled to Pittsburgh and spent multiple training sessions with the 3-time NFL Defensive Player of the Year. He didn't just study Donald, he went to the source. He worked with the man himself. And according to his coaches at Navy, Robinson is obsessed with getting better. Navy's defensive line coach, Jarek Hall, said that Robinson is obsessed with getting better, more than anybody. He loves watching film. He can't get enough of watching Aaron Donald. He loves tackling the little things that go with playing on the defensive line, like when to be more patient before shedding a block. He's all about details, sharpening tools. That's the kind of dedication that separates the guys who make it from the guys who don't. That's the kind of mindset that turns a seventh round pick into a contributor. That's the kind of work ethic that makes you believe in a player, even when the odds are stacked against him. Most fans completely miss this part of the story, but Robinson has already been impressing the coaching staff since he arrived in Cincinnati. According to reports from rookie minicamp, Robinson was front and center soaking in coaching throughout OTAs. He wasn't just going through the motions. He wasn't just happy to be there. He was working, learning, and trying to earn his spot. Head coach Zach Taylor has praised Robinson's talent and work ethic, and the team was reportedly thrilled to get him in the 7th round. Taylor said that Robinson was just too talented to pass up, and the expectation is that he will be too talented to keep off the final 53-man roster. That's not just coach speak. That's a legitimate endorsement from a head coach who doesn't hand out praise lightly. When Zach Taylor says a 7th-round pick is too talented to keep off the roster, you sit up and pay attention. And let's talk about the athleticism, because that's another area where Robinson defies expectations. At his pro day, he ran a 4.86 40-yard dash, posted a 32.5-inch vertical jump, and recorded impressive agility numbers. For a 295-pound defensive tackle, those are phenomenal numbers. He's not just strong, he's explosive, he's not just quick, he's agile. He has the kind of movement skills that allow him to beat blockers off the snap, slip through gaps, and get into the backfield before the offense even knows what hit them. And the strength numbers are just as impressive. He can squat 665 pounds, bench press 465 pounds, and power clean 350 pounds. That's the kind of raw power that translates directly to the football field. The kind of power that allows an undersized player to hold his own against much larger opponents. When you combine that kind of strength with that kind of quickness, you get a player who can disrupt the game in ways that bigger, slower players simply can't. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, Dre, this is great and all, but the defensive line is so crowded. Where is he going to fit? And that's a fair question. The Bengals already have a logjam at defensive tackle. They have Dexter Lawrence, Jonathan Allen, B.J. Hill, T.J. Slayton, McKinley Jackson, and Chris Jenkins Jr. all competing for snaps. It's the deepest position group on the roster, and yet the Bengals used a 7th-round pick on Robinson anyway. That tells you something about how they view him. They see a player who could develop into a contributor, they see a player who could potentially carve out a role in the rotation, and they see a player who, if he reaches his potential, could make some of those other guys expendable. The Bengals aren't in the habit of wasting draft picks, even late ones. They saw something in Robinson that made them believe he could be more than just a camp body. They saw a player who could actually make this team. But here's the thing that I find really intriguing about this situation. The Bengals have a history of finding value in the later rounds of the draft. They've found contributors in the 7th round before. They've found players who have outplayed their draft position and become key pieces of the roster. And Robinson fits that mold perfectly. He has the production, he has the athleticism, he has the work ethic, and he has the chip on his shoulder that comes from being overlooked. He's not going to be satisfied with just making the team. He's going to want to prove that he belongs. He's going to want to show everyone who passed on him that they made a mistake. And when you have a player with that kind of motivation, combined with that kind of talent, you have the recipe for a surprise contributor. And that's the kind of player who can become a fan favorite. The 7th-round pick who defies the odds. The undersized defensive tackle who fights his way onto the roster and becomes a contributor. The guy who models his game after Aaron Donald and actually shows flashes of that potential. Robinson has all the tools to be that player. He has the strength to hold his ground against the run. He has the quickness to penetrate against the pass. He has the instincts to find the ball. He has the motor to keep going play after play. He's not a finished product by any means, but he's a player with a clear path to improvement, and he's in a situation where he has the opportunity to learn from some of the best in the business. He's going to be learning from Dexter Lawrence, who is one of the best defensive tackles in the league. He's going to be learning from Jonathan Allen, who has been a consistent producer for years. He's going to be in a room full of veterans who can teach him the intricacies of the position. That's the kind of environment that allows a young player to develop and grow. And let's be honest about what a successful rookie season looks like for a 7th-round pick. Simply making the 53-man roster would be a victory. Earning rotational snaps would be a massive overachievement. And if Robinson can contribute in a limited role, if he can provide some pass rush juice in certain situations, if he can spell Lawrence or Allen and keep them fresh, then the Bengals will have gotten tremendous value from that pick. The expectations are low, but the potential is high. That's the kind of situation that allows a player to exceed expectations and become a real contributor. And if Robinson can do that, if he can carve out a role on this defensive line, then the Bengals will have found a gem in the 7th round. But I want to go back to the Aaron Donald comparison for a moment because I think there's a danger in making that comparison too casually. Aaron Donald is a generational talent. He's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's one of the best players to ever play the game. And I'm not saying that Landon Robinson is going to be Aaron Donald. That would be unfair to Robinson and unfair to Donald. What I am saying is that there are similarities in their build and their skill set that make the comparison instructive. Both players are undersized for the position. Both players use leverage and quickness to overcome their lack of size. Both players have a nonstop motor and a relentless work ethic. And if Robinson can follow the blueprint that Donald laid out, if he can develop some of those same techniques, then he can carve out a long and productive career in the NFL. He might not be a Hall of Famer, but he could be a solid contributor, and that would be a massive win for a 7th round pick. And there's one more thing I want to mention because I think it's a huge part of this story. Robinson is from Fairlawn, Ohio, and his dad, Lance, is a lifelong Bengals fan. This isn't just another player coming to Cincinnati. This is a hometown kid who grew up rooting for this team, who dreamed of playing for this team, and who now has the opportunity to make that dream a reality. That's the kind of emotional connection that can fuel a player, that can give him an extra edge, that can push him to work just a little bit harder. And when you combine that with his natural talent and his insane work ethic, you have a recipe for a player who is going to give everything he has to make this team. He's not going to be satisfied with just being on the roster. He's going to want to make an impact. He's going to want to make his hometown proud. And that kind of motivation is invaluable. Now, I've given you my take. I've laid out the facts. I've shown you the numbers. But I want to know what you think. Do you see Landon Robinson making the 53-man roster? Type Y for yes, type N for no in the comments. And if you're excited about what this kid could become, smash that like button and show some love for the hometown underdog. Let me know if you think the Bengals have found a hidden gem in the 7th round, or if you think this is just another camp body who will be cut before the season starts. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, if you want more no-filter football coverage, make sure you subscribe to Dre Talk Sports and turn on notifications so you never miss a single update from the jungle. We're just getting started, and I promise you, the best is yet to come. We're going to be covering training camp, preseason games, roster cuts, and everything in between. You don't want to miss a single second of the action. This is Dre, signing off from Street Hoops. Let's go get that win. Who day?